I woke up today feeling empty. I don't know how else to describe it. My alarm went off, and for a second, I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the world outside the bedroom. Sophie was still asleep, and Liam had already gone off to school. Mark was away on another business trip, leaving me alone to face another day. I got up quietly, trying not to wake Sophie. The house was still dark, the kind of quiet that feels isolating. I made my way to the kitchen, already thinking about everything I needed to do. I should start the laundry. I should clean up. I should write the emails I've been putting off for days. I should do this. I should do that. But the truth is, I wasn't sure I even had the energy to do any of it. The first cup of coffee helped, but not much. The weight of loneliness seemed to settle in, curling around me like a blanket that was too heavy. I thought about how much time I spend every day caring for others, putting their needs above my own. But when the house is quiet, when the kids are gone and there's no one left to care for except myself, I feel a pang of loneliness, like I've been forgotten. I pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, sitting there for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. This wasn't a new feeling. It happens often enough to make me realize that motherhood, despite being filled with constant demands, can also be incredibly lonely. Sophie woke up around 8:30, as she always does, and I carried her downstairs, trying to shake off the heaviness. I was fine. I would be fine. I told myself this over and over, but the loneliness lingered. I started her breakfast, getting the bowl of cereal ready as she babbled happily, still half asleep, her little hands reaching for her favorite spoon. As I watched her eat, I realized that my loneliness wasn't just about being alone at home. It wasn't just about missing Mark or having no adult conversation. It was deeper than that. It was the isolation I felt in my role as a mother, the sense that no matter how much I give, there are parts of me that are lost, pieces of my identity that are slipping away in the rush of parenting, work, and life. I tried to shake it off. It's just a phase, I told myself. Every mom feels like this sometimes. But today, it felt heavier than usual. Sophie's high-pitched giggle broke through my thoughts, and I smiled, grateful for her presence. She was a whirlwind of energy and joy, and her simple moments of happiness were enough to make me feel grounded. But even as I smiled at her, there was an ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. When Liam came home from school, he was excited to tell me about his day, but I was too tired to fully engage. I nodded and smiled, listening to his stories, but it felt like I was drifting somewhere else. Somewhere far from the moment. I wanted to be there for him, to be the engaged, present mom he deserved, but the loneliness I felt was pulling me away from everything around me. Later in the afternoon, after Liam and Sophie were both occupied, I found myself staring at the empty space in the house. There were toys scattered on the floor, laundry that still hadn't been folded, a pile of dishes that needed to be washed. But none of it felt important in that moment. What felt important was the overwhelming silence. The quiet that comes when you're alone with your thoughts, with your insecurities, with the parts of you that are left unspoken. I had given so much of myself to everyone else that I had nothing left to give to myself. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained, and the loneliness crept in when I wasn't paying attention. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through social media, looking at other moms who seemed to have it all together. They were smiling in their perfectly curated posts, their houses spotless, their kids well-behaved, their lives so full of joy and activity. I couldn't help but compare myself. Why did I feel like I was always behind, always struggling to keep up? The loneliness grew with each scroll, each picture of happy, perfect families. I realized that, even in a sea of people, I was still alone. No one understood how hard it was to be a mom who felt like she was drowning in the demands of life. No one saw the tears I'd wiped away when no one was looking, the exhaustion I felt when I went to bed every night. I dropped my phone onto the couch and sat down with my head in my hands. I wasn't crying. I wasn't falling apart. But I felt like I was disappearing. Like the woman I used to be was getting lost in the routine of motherhood. Sophie toddled over to me, her little arms outstretched. "Mommy," she said softly, looking up at me with her big, innocent eyes. I picked her up, holding her close, and breathed in her sweet scent. In that moment, she was all I needed. She was the anchor that kept me grounded, even in the storm of emotions I was trying to suppress. But as I kissed the top of her head, the truth settled in. No one had prepared me for this kind of loneliness, the kind that sneaks up on you when you're doing everything right, the kind that makes you question whether you're enough. By the time Mark got home, I had made dinner, gotten the kids settled, and forced myself to push through the loneliness. I didn't want to burden him with my emotions, especially since he was getting home late after a long day. But I couldn't help it. I tried to be cheerful, to mask how heavy everything felt inside. When Mark walked through the door, I greeted him with a smile that I hoped was convincing. "Hey," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "How was your day?" He smiled back, but I could see the exhaustion on his face. "Long day," he said, dropping his bag on the chair. "How are you?" I paused, searching for the right words. I didn't want to say anything that would make him feel guilty for being away, but I also didn't want to keep bottling everything up. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I'm okay," I lied. "Just tired." I didn't tell him about the loneliness that had crept in throughout the day, the emptiness I felt even as I cared for the kids. I didn't tell him that I was struggling to balance everything: motherhood, my own needs, my identity. And that no matter how much I did, it never seemed like enough. Instead, I sat down with him and we had dinner, talking about nothing in particular, as if everything was fine. After we finished eating, I excused myself to clean up the kitchen. Mark sat at the table with Liam, helping him with his homework, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I didn't belong to myself anymore. I belonged to the house, to the kids, to the routine, to the never-ending list of things I needed to do. The dishes were never ending. I washed, rinsed, and scrubbed, my hands moving automatically, lost in the rhythm of it all. But with each plate I washed, I felt further from who I used to be. I used to be a woman who had passions, dreams, and goals beyond motherhood. I used to be someone who could sit down with a book or go for a walk without thinking about laundry or meal prep or the next task on the list. But now, I felt like I had lost all of that. As I put the dishes away, I found myself staring at the clutter around me. The toys scattered across the floor, the half-finished projects on the counter, the shoes piled up in the hallway. It was a mess, but it was my mess. It was the mess of motherhood, of life, of all the things I had to juggle every day. And even as I cleaned it up, I couldn't help but wonder if I was cleaning up after myself too, trying to fix things that couldn't be fixed. Mark came into the kitchen after a while, leaning against the doorway, watching me. I looked up, my eyes meeting his, and for a second I saw the concern in his gaze. "You okay?" he asked again, softer this time. I took a deep breath. It was so much harder to lie now, to pretend that everything was fine. I wiped my hands on the dish towel and turned to face him. "I don't know, Mark. I feel like I'm disappearing." He raised an eyebrow, his face softening. "What do you mean?" "I don't know who I am anymore," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I'm just a mom, and that's it. I've given so much of myself to this family, to being a mom, to keeping everything together. And I feel like I've lost parts of myself along the way. I don't even remember what it feels like to just be me." He was quiet for a moment, letting my words sink in. Then he stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into a hug. It felt good to be held, to be seen, even if just for a moment. "I get it," he said softly. "I know you feel like you've lost yourself. But you haven't. You're still in there. You're just buried right now. But you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry all of this by yourself." I squeezed my eyes shut, the tears that I had been holding back threatening to spill. I didn't want to cry. I didn't want to feel weak or needy. But the truth was, I was exhausted. Exhausted from pretending like I had it all together, from pushing through the loneliness without asking for help, from giving everything and feeling like I was getting nothing in return. "I just need to feel like I'm more than just a mom," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I need to feel like I matter outside of this house, outside of taking care of everyone else." Mark pulled back slightly, looking at me with understanding in his eyes. "You matter. You always have. But I think it's okay to take time for yourself. You're allowed to feel like this. You're allowed to have your own needs. And I'll be here to support you through it." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and guilt. I didn't know how to ask for help, didn't know how to make space for myself without feeling selfish. But maybe that was part of the problem. Maybe I was so caught up in trying to be everything for everyone that I had forgotten to take care of myself. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, I sat down on the couch with a glass of wine, trying to unwind. The house was still messy, the laundry was still waiting, but for once, I didn't feel the need to fix everything immediately. I didn't have to have it all together. I didn't have to be perfect. Mark sat next to me, his arm around my shoulders. We didn't need to say much. I could feel the weight of the day lifting slowly, as I allowed myself to just be. I wasn't alone, I wasn't invisible, and I didn't need to have all the answers right now. After the kids were in bed and the house was finally quiet, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea, the weight of the day settling in. I had tried to hold it all together, to keep everything running smoothly, but now I was left with a quiet emptiness, the kind of silence that echoes in the spaces between breaths. I thought about what Mark had said earlier, that I didn't have to do this alone, that I was allowed to feel like I was losing myself, but I didn't have to stay there. And yet, even with his words of reassurance, I couldn't shake the sense of isolation that seemed to follow me everywhere. I picked up my phone, scrolling through social media mindlessly, but everything I saw only made me feel more disconnected. Other moms were posting pictures of family outings, playdates, and perfect meals. There they were, looking so happy and fulfilled, their kids smiling in matching outfits, their houses immaculate. I couldn't help but compare myself. It felt like everyone else had it figured out, like they had some secret to balance it all. Work, home, family, personal time. While I was barely keeping my head above water. I looked at the photos of other moms, wondering how they did it all, and I couldn't help but feel like I was failing. I felt like I was just getting by, but everyone else was thriving. I set the phone down with a sigh. It wasn't helping. In fact, it was making everything worse. I didn't need to see everyone else's perfect lives. I needed to focus on my own, imperfect as it was. I stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the dark sky. The stars were barely visible through the city lights, but the vastness of the night made me feel small. In the grand scheme of things, I was just one person in a world full of millions, and sometimes that made the loneliness feel even bigger. I wondered if other moms felt this way, this sense of loneliness that crept in when no one else was around. The kind of loneliness that comes with the territory of always putting everyone else's needs first. Maybe they felt it too, even if they didn't say it. Maybe we were all silently carrying the same burden, each of us lost in our own thoughts, trying to figure out how to be everything for everyone. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. It wasn't that I didn't love my kids. I loved them with all my heart. But sometimes, I felt like there was no room left for me. I felt like I had given up parts of myself to be a mom, and now I wasn't sure who I was without those parts. The silence in the room was deafening, and I realized I was holding my breath. Slowly, I exhaled, releasing the tension in my shoulders. Maybe it's okay to not have everything figured out, I thought. Maybe it's okay to feel lonely sometimes. Maybe that's just part of this whole motherhood journey. I walked back to the couch, sitting down again, and picked up my journal. I hadn't written in it in days. The words had felt stuck, like they couldn't find their way out. But tonight, I needed to write. I needed to get everything that had been swirling in my mind down on paper, to release it in some way. So I picked up the pen and began to write. Some days I feel like I'm invisible, like I'm just going through the motions, doing everything for everyone else, and forgetting about myself. I love my kids more than anything, but there's a loneliness that comes with this role. It's the kind of loneliness that sneaks up on you when you're doing the laundry, cleaning the kitchen, making dinner, when you're giving so much of yourself away, but no one notices. It's the kind of loneliness that comes from not having anyone to talk to. From feeling like you're drowning in tasks and never having a moment to breathe. I don't know when it started, this feeling of being lost in the shuffle. I don't know when I started to feel like I wasn't enough. But today, it's harder than usual. The loneliness is heavier today. I feel like I'm disappearing. Like the woman I used to be is buried under all these layers of responsibility. I wish I could just be me again, but I don't even know who that is anymore. I stopped writing for a moment, staring at the words on the page. It was like I was seeing myself for the first time in weeks, maybe months. I had been so focused on everyone else. Liam, Sophie, Mark, the house, the endless list of things I had to do, that I had lost sight of who I was. I had buried myself under the weight of motherhood, and now I was struggling to find my way back. But I didn't have the answers. I didn't know how to fix it. How to stop feeling so lonely, so disconnected. I didn't know how to make the loneliness go away, but at least, for the first time in a while, I had acknowledged it. I had allowed myself to feel it. I put the pen down and leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes. The house was quiet now, and I allowed myself to sit in that quiet for a moment. I was alone with my thoughts, but for once I didn't feel the pressure to fill the silence. I didn't need to be anyone else right now. I just needed to be.